Hello, everyone, and today we'll be looking at a fascinating topic: why the United States of America is the most powerful country in the world right now. Yeah, right now. It could change later in the future, but right now, we perceive that the United States of America is the most powerful country in the world. Now, my name is Shegun. Thank you very much for liking our videos, watching our videos. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on this video. If you like what we do, you could also reach out to family and friends, drop your comments. Also, you can give your own opinions basically about our videos. Thank you, and we look forward to your kind gesture. Once again, I say my name is Shegun. Now, the United States of America, or the US for short, has dominated the geopolitical scene for close to a century. Of course, if you go back to the 1940s, during the World War II, you will discover that the introduction of the United States into the World War II changed the entire landscape, and they have dominated the world ever since. Although one can say that their position as a superpower was cemented, of course, after the defeat of Adolf Hitler during the World War II. The Soviet Union will still always argue that, or you can call it USSR, Soviet Union or USSR for short, can challenge that claim. And of course, they did actually challenge the claim. Now that the Soviet Union doesn't exactly exist anymore, we can say that the US is a global superpower. Of course, Russia and Vladimir Putin can still challenge the claim, but let's face it, right now the US calls many shots. Of course, the Russia-Ukraine war is an example of Trump stepping in and also even dictating for the whole of Europe, if you get my point. So it's safe to say that the United States of America is the most powerful country in the world right now. Now, before we continue, of course, with the video, like I said, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and ring the notification bell to get more content from us and to know when we release new videos. All right, let's go back to the video, and we need to outline a couple of things. Number one, why did the World War II make the US become a superpower? The second question we need to ask ourselves is, why did the Soviet Union actually challenge it? And the third question we need to ask ourselves is, how can a country become a superpower? And of course, finally, are there other superpowers in the world today? Okay, so let's start with question number one. Why did the World War II make the US become a superpower? Now, to answer this question, we need to look at the war itself. Exactly. The war which was led by, we won't dive too deep, but of course, we understand that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Germany were arguably the most powerful country in Europe at the time. They were very powerful, and with their strong military presence and their sophisticated equipment, you saw that they had a lot of good military strategies, the maneuverings and everything. Hitler practically won every single war he partook in until the decline started, which was Operation Barbarossa. I'm not here to talk about World War II. I'm just here to talk a little bit about the war. You see that Hitler had to fight the West, which is France and Britain, and then on the East he also had to fight with Russia. Of course, Britain put out a very good fight to resist Hitler on the Western Front when Churchill took over as Prime Minister, and Joseph Stalin, of course, held Moscow. You know, it was very, very close for Moscow to be defeated, because they were already at the doors. But of course, winter set in, winter came in, and a lot of the German soldiers could not survive the winter period. Let's fast forward the entire story. The major turning point was the US throughout were actually neutral until they were provoked by both Japan and Germany. So Japan, who happened to be like an ally of Germany at that time, provoked the United States through the attack on Pearl Harbor. And of course, we understand that even German ships took out some US ships that were carrying groceries and food items, and of course some little ammunitions. So in the course of that, the US finally entered into the fray. And the reason why, you could also say the reason why the US entered into the fray was because the US themselves were facing a financial crisis back at home, and of course Theodore Roosevelt felt it was an opportunity to make a name for himself, which he did. US joined the war together with the Allies, and Berlin was defeated after a siege of about 16 days. End of story. So let's go back to the video. Now, Hitler died, of course, as the war was over, and since the Allies did not defeat Hitler until the US joined, the US claimed the right to be called superpower. And of course, that was how the World War II made the US a superpower. So of course, assuming France and England, of course France was defeated, let's not forget, and it was occupied by Germany, but assuming those guys actually put up a fight and was able to push Germany back, perhaps US would have not called themselves a superpower. But since the US had to enter before things could turn around, then the US decided to claim itself as a superpower. Of course, we need to understand that Germany was defeated, but Hitler killed himself and ordered his body to be burnt. But we need to look at why exactly which goes to the second question, why exactly the Soviet Union challenged the reason for US calling themselves superpower. What's the reason? Why could the Soviet Union even think of challenging it? Of course, the reason why the Soviet Union challenged it is because the Soviet Union were the first to get into Berlin. It was a race between Stalin on the east and the Allies on the west to see who gets to Germany first, who gets to Berlin, that's the capital of Germany, and see who conquers Hitler first. Of course, the Soviet Union got in first, and then because of that, they felt that although the US called themselves that if they had not joined the war would have not been won by the Allies. But Stalin felt, because he used a lot of military, he used about 2.5 million Red Army for the USSR, and he lost a lot of soldiers, but yet he felt he should have actually gotten the praise as superpower, not the United States, and that was the reason why they challenged it. They got there first, and they felt they had the right to be called the superpower, not the United States. Anyways, the other question you might want to ask yourself is, how can a country, because a lot of the story that I've spoken about, how can a country right now in this age become a superpower? So there are couple of things you need to know. Number one is, the first thing you need to note is military presence. Every superpower must have a strong military in terms of numbers, artillery equipment, battleship, air force, etc. A lot of things. Of course, we understand that the Chinese have been boosting their navy. We understand that there's nuclear power, all those things. You must make sure that you have strong military presence. The second thing is strong trade influence. Of course, when we look at the place of trade influence, you have some things that you can export to the rest of the world, and they can't really do without it. There are things that the United States exports to the entire world. Of course, they are fresh cash for a start, because the country is the richest country in the world at the moment. And there are a lot of things that, say for example, Russia exports to the world in terms of Russia gas, Russian oil, and all those things. Of course, that's why the sanctions, India and China as in buying from Russia. So you need to have a very strong trade influence. The third thing is that you need to have an influence in other nations. Yes, I'm not saying that we're bringing back colonialism, but you discover that all of these different superpowers have influence in other nations. For example, imagine America trying to claim that the Gulf of Mexico should be renamed the Gulf of America, or them claiming that the Panama Canal should be returned back to the US. Of course, the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine is because Ukraine said they wanted to join NATO. And you ask yourself, but Ukraine is a sovereign country. But yet Russia kind of wants to have an influence on Ukraine and every other Baltic states country that are around Russia. So you see all these different influences around the world. Of course, Trump also trying to look for how America can claim Greenland as America, and also speaking to Canada and telling Canada to become the 51st state in America. So all those things shows you what makes people become superpower. And that criteria is your economy must be good. Of course, there are a lot of persons who have bad economy and they might have all these military, but still they can't be called a superpower. For example, take a practical example is Iran. Iran has a good military, but Iran actually can't be called a superpower because their economy is trash. So at the moment, now you must have nuclear bombs, and perhaps you must also have gone to the moon. Of course, there are only 4 countries who have gone to the moon in the world at the moment. The USSR, that's number 1, the United States number 2, China number 3, and just some few years ago, India, that's number 4. So of course, you also must have you can categorize China as, yes, so if you're asking yourself a question, are there other superpowers today, you can categorize China as a superpower, you can categorize Russia as a superpower, you can look at India as an upcoming superpower, the 5th largest economy in the world. Saudi Arabia is also growing and wants to join that group, and Saudi Arabia has insisted that if Iran gets nuclear arsenal, they would also get a nuclear arsenal. So of course, whatever makes Saudi Arabia get a nuclear arsenal, I can almost categorically say they are already a superpower, because they are like one of the richest countries in the world at the moment. Then they also look at countries who have nuclear weapons, but maybe you may not necessarily call them superpowers, but they are also very strong countries. France has nuclear weapons. It's a strong country, but you may not call them a superpower at the moment, but I think that's one of the strongest countries in Europe at the moment. UK is a very strong country, has nuclear arsenal, but it's not necessarily a superpower at the moment. Germany, of course, does not have nuclear arsenal, but that's the largest economy in Europe at the moment. Very, very strong country, and very, very key to Europe. So these countries are very strong countries, and they may appear to be on the decline, but of course, with Germany's new elections and with Emmanuel Macron trying to pull his weight, perhaps there could be a turn of fortunes with respect to Europe. Of course, Brazil is a strong country and has dominated the South American for a very, very long time. You can talk about Canada, but the thing is, Canada relies heavily on their allies like US for support. Japan is a very, very strong economy, the third strongest economy in the world. The fourth strongest economy in the world after Germany. But the economy has stagnated for years, although they are trying to turn the corner at the moment. And of course, North Korea has nuclear weapons. Very plenty nuclear weapons, but has a very terrible economy. So all these persons, you could maybe categorize them as strong countries, strong economies, or but you may not necessarily be able to put them in the bracket of superpowers. Now, I'll just leave you with this: can an African country ever become a superpower? Well, maybe not today, but I would like you to give your own comments. Put your comments in the comment section below if you feel any African country can ever become a superpower. All right, thank you very much. Today we have looked at why the United States of America is the most powerful country in the world right now, and you can also tell us some other reasons that we might have not covered of why you think the US is the strongest country in the world at the moment. Bye for now.